versus Nathaniel David Rowland. What I will now say is intended to serve as an introduction to the trial of the case. These remarks are not a charge on the law in the case, and I will instruct you as to the law during the trial and in greater detail at the end of the trial before you retire to consider your verdict. This is merely an explanation of the procedure that we will follow so that you will better understand what may be happening. Many of you may want to take notes during the trial. If you do, the bailiffs will be instructed to provide you with a notepad to take notes. Individual notepads, you will have to leave them in the courtroom when you go to the jury room. You will not have access to them other than while you're seated in the jury box until deliberations. Understand that some of us are better note takers than others, and the fact that one person has taken a note is not any substitution for the recollection of your fellow jurors. The defendant, Mr. Rowland, is charged by an indictment filed with this court. He's charged with the offense of murder, kidnapping, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. He has pled not guilty to these charges. The indictment or the indictments are simply the charge or charges which has been levied against the defendant, and it is not in any sense evidence of the allegations contained in it. His plea of not guilty places upon the state the burden of proving each and every element of the indictments against him beyond a reasonable doubt. And it will be your duty as jurors to decide whether the state has met that burden. Your purpose as jurors is to find and to determine the facts of this case, because out of all the 600-700 people who were summoned, the great multitude who appeared yesterday, out of all the people who appeared this morning, out of all the people who live in the state of South Carolina, Richland County, out of all the people in the world, only the 12 of you who will deliberate can decide the facts of this case. You are the sole judge of the facts of this case. And if at any time I make any comment regarding the facts, you must disregard it because you are the sole judges of the facts of this case. Now, just as you are the sole judges of the facts as the presiding judge, I am the sole judge of the law. And you must accept as correct the law as I stated to you at this time, during the trial, and in greater detail at the end of the trial. You are to determine the facts from the testimony that will come from this witness stand to my right, together with other evidence and exhibits that may be offered. It is especially important that you perform your duty of determining the facts diligently, that you are conscientious and stay focused on the evidence, because ordinarily there is no way to correct an erroneous determination of a fact by a jury. We will take sufficient breaks so that you will not get worn out sitting for a long period of time. As I stated to you earlier, you are to not discuss the case with anyone after you leave the courtroom. You are to refrain. You must make a conscious effort to refrain from being exposed to any information about the case outside of the courtroom. You're not to consult or review any internet sources, any websites, blogs. You're not to engage in any personal investigation. You are to refrain from any access to any information about this case because you just took an oath to well and duly try this case and render a true verdict according to the law and according to the evidence, so help you God. And once you if you uphold that oath and stick to that oath, you will have fulfilled your duty as jurors, and no one will have any basis to complain about your verdict. Now, as I indicated, you are to determine the facts of this case from the law, from the evidence that is presented, including exhibits. Necessarily, you will have to evaluate the credibility, that is the believability of the evidence that is offered during the course of the trial. In just a moment, the solicitor will make what's called an opening statement, in which reference would be made to the what the state believes that the evidence in the case will show. And following that, the defendant will be given an opportunity through counsel to do so if they desire. We'll proceed now to opening statements from the state.
May I please report? Ms. Pinnock, Ms. Good, Mr. Pillinger, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. March 28th, 2019 was supposed to be a celebration. Samantha Josephson and friends were gathering together as a celebration of life. They hadn't seen one another in a while, and they were getting together because, quite frankly, they were all about to graduate. They were getting together to relive a few of those kind and fun moments of college, and a chance to reflect a little bit on those times and also to think a little bit about what the future was to hold. They were looking towards toasting and celebrating the fact that they were graduating and moving to a new phase of their life. They had their eyes firmly fixed on their futures and their eyes firmly fixed on their love for one another. But what they didn't realize, what they could never have realized, is that the defendant, Nathaniel David Rowland, had his eyes firmly fixed on Samantha Josephson. He had his eyes fixed on Miss Josephson as she walked outside the Bird Dog Lounge in 5 Points, alone. As she walked outside, as she had ordered an Uber ride, alone. As she stood there alone waiting on that Uber, he had his eyes firmly transfixed on her as she waited for that Uber ride to arrive. We know this because 5 Points has cameras. The cameras captured Nathaniel Rowland's vehicle, a 2017 Chevrolet Impala, a black 2017 Chevrolet Impala, circling the block multiple times, not stopping to converse with people, not stopping to eat, but just circling the block, sometimes even in the wrong direction down Saluda Avenue. 5 Points has cameras. Cameras record Nathaniel Rowland's 2017 black Impala as it pulls into a parking space next to where Samantha is waiting by herself for that Uber. And she mistakenly gets into that vehicle owned by the defendant, Nathaniel David Rowland. And we know that to be true because those cameras and 5 points that I mentioned to you captured those things. The evidence will show that after she got into that vehicle, that's the last time that anybody saw her alive. The next time that somebody saw Samantha Josephson, she was found alone in the woods, covered in her own blood, dead. She'd been stabbed multiple times from the bottom of her feet, throughout her torso, throughout her face, her neck, and her head. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm Byron Gibson. I'm the solicitor here. And along with Deputy Solicitor Daniel Goldberg, Deputy Solicitor April Sampson, and Assistant Solicitor Amanda Gaston, we represent the state of South Carolina against the defendant, Nathaniel David Rowland. Now, over the next couple moments, I'm going to give you just a little bit of a roadmap so that you'll understand where we're going and what we're going to be doing over the next several days as we try this case. And let me say this, just a point of order. You may see the folks at this table sometimes without masks on. We've been vaccinated. We're not making a political statement. We're conversing with one another. We've been together for some period of time and we're comfortable with one another. We believe that the evidence in this case is going to show, and the evidence that you're going to hear from this witness chair in this courtroom, that once Samantha Josephson got into Nathaniel Rowland's 2017 Black Impala, she couldn't get out. And she couldn't get out because the child's safety lights were engaged. We believe that the evidence will show that that vehicle traveled through the Shandon community and into the Rosewood community. We know that to be true because Samantha's friends and her boyfriend Greg shared their locations on a social app called Find My Friend. We believe that investigators will testify that Samantha's phone tracked into that Rosewood community, but mysteriously powered off around 2:27 a.m., roughly 20 minutes from the time that she got into Nathaniel Rowland's 2017 Black Impala. We believe that the evidence will show that Nathaniel Rowland's phone and Samantha Josephson's phones tracked together, meaning they were together in that car, in that vehicle at some point in time. We believe the evidence will show that after Samantha's phone powered off, that Mr. Rowland's phone continued to ping, to be tracked up Rosewood, up Garners Ferry Road, eventually up Sumter Highway, into Sumter, South Carolina, and then into a small community called New Zion. New Zion, remember that place. New Zion is important for several reasons. Number one, it's the childhood town of the defendant, Nathaniel David Rowland. It's the place where Samantha Josephson's body was found, where it had been discarded, where it had been dumped. And interestingly enough, the place where her body was discarded, dumped, that remote area, was just about 2 miles from the family home of Nathaniel David Rowland. We expect that the evidence will show that after leaving New Zion, Mr. Rowland's phone tracks back through Sumter, South Carolina. But this time, he makes a stop. Someone is seen using Samantha Josephson's debit card, Wells Fargo card, attempting to get money out of her account, 2 times unsuccessfully. The evidence will show that Mr. Rowland's phone tracks back into Columbia, South Carolina, pretty much the corner of Rosewood and Garners Ferry. There's a Wells Fargo there. Video evidence will show, again, a person attempting to get money out of Samantha Josephson's account. 9 attempts, each one of those 9 attempts unsuccessful. And again, video evidence will show those things. We expect that you'll hear testimony from a person named Maria, somebody who was a friend of Mr. Josephson, who had just begun to have some type of relationship with Mr. Josephson. We believe the testimony will show that Mr. Josephson had access to Maria's home. Maria was a friend who Mr. Rowland was supposed to be taking to work that morning, some hours after Samantha disappeared. He was late, but he did arrive at Maria's home. And when he got there, got in the car, Maria got in the car, we expect the testimony will show that she questioned what was going on inside that car. Why was there blood inside the car? We expect that you'll hear testimony about the fact that once she arrived at work late, there was an agreement that he was to pick her up from work, but he was late to that as well. We expect the testimony will show video evidence of Mr. Rowland walking into the store to attempt to sell Samantha Josephson's cell phone. We expect that you'll hear evidence. You'll hear evidence from this witness chair of witnesses who will talk about the bloody clothes of Nathaniel Rowland that they found in a dumpster behind Maria's home that he had access to. Cleaning products that were in a dumpster behind Maria's home that he had access to. And this peculiar looking knife bladed tool that we expect Maria will testify that she'd seen Mr. Rowland with on a previous occasion. We also expect that you'll hear that that weapon was found in the garbage behind Maria's home. But equally important, as you hear testimony, you'll hear from a pathologist. That pathologist will explain to you that Samantha Josephson suffered over 100 different stab wounds and cuts and abrasions across her body. And those wounds were consistent with that blade that they found, or that was found in the trash behind Maria's home. That blade that she saw him cleaning at some point in time the next day. I submit to you that as you hear additional testimony, you'll hear testimony about DNA analysts and crime scene analysts who came and they took a look at Mr. Rowland's 2017 black Impala. And they found Samantha Josephson's blood in that Impala, her prints in that Impala, her hair in that Impala. We suggest to you that that's the same vehicle that was seen circling around 5 Points. The same vehicle that Maria rode in that day and said, hey, what's going on with the blood? That same vehicle that 24 hours after Samantha Josephson came up missing. That same vehicle that was back in 5 Points, riding down the street. Evidence will show that the Columbia Police Department initiated a traffic stop on that 2017 black Impala. And Mr. Rowland eventually stopped the car after he turned the wrong way down Saluda Avenue for the second time in less than 24 hours. Mr. Rowland, at some point, gets out of the vehicle, speaks with police, and takes off running. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's for those intentional, deliberate, heinous, cruel, and malicious acts that Nathaniel David Rowland has been indicted for kidnapping Samantha Josephson. He's been indicted for murdering Samantha Josephson. And he's been indicted for possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. And at the appropriate time, we'll ask that you return verdicts of guilty on each one of those counts. Now, as the prosecutor, I carry the role, and all of us at this table carry the role, of having to prove the case against Nathaniel David Rowland every element, as Judge Newman has said, beyond a reasonable doubt. And we welcome that role. We welcome that opportunity. Our courts have defined reasonable doubt in a couple ways. One is reasonable doubt is the amount of doubt that makes a reasonable person hesitate to act. The amount of doubt that causes a reasonable person to hesitate to act. Or a second definition is you, the jury, must be firmly convinced of a defendant's guilt in order to find him guilty. Now, Judge Newman has explained to you the roles that each of us has in this courtroom. But part of that role, too, is the definitions that I just gave. You actually will take those definitions from Judge Newman, because he's the judge of the law in this case. He will instruct you on reasonable doubt. He'll instruct you on all of the other legal matters that you have to deal with. And you're to take the law as he gives it to you, because he is the judge in this case, and he is the judge of the law of this case. But you have a role as well. Each of you will be a judge of the facts of this case. And the facts that come from this witness chair, the evidence that comes from this witness chair, will be what you make your decisions on. You'll take the facts that you learn here and apply the law that Judge Newman gives you. And ultimately, when that time comes, when you're instructed to, deliberate. Now, some of you are probably asking, well, how in the world am I supposed to deliberate and deal with the facts and judge evidence and all this stuff that you're talking about? Let me just give you a couple tips and then I'll get out of your face. First, you're going to be introduced to basically 3 different types of evidence in this case. The first is direct evidence. Direct evidence is evidence that you can see, that you can touch, that you can feel, maybe even smell. Direct evidence. A second type of evidence is circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence is evidence that you can infer exists from a series of facts. I'll say that again. Evidence that you can infer exists based on a series of facts. So one of the best analogies of circumstantial evidence that I can give you is, as we sit in this courtroom today, we all know it's summer in South Carolina. It's raining today, it's a little warm outside. But let's say we walk out of here at 5:30, 6 o'clock today, or whatever time the Judge Newman tells us we can go home, and you see snow on the ground. Let's say you see icicles hanging down from the post office. You see tracks in there, and maybe see some penguins walking around. You didn't see what happened, but you can infer that it snowed. You may not have seen it coming down, you may not have felt the weather change, but you can infer that it snowed based on the series of facts that there's snow on the ground, that there are tracks, that there are icicles. You can infer that. I say that because when it comes to circumstantial evidence, it's just as powerful as direct evidence. And that's some of the things that you'll see in this case. You'll have circumstantial evidence, and you can infer certain things happened based on that series of facts. And you're to take that just as you would direct evidence. A third type of evidence that you'll see in this case are stipulations. Stipulations are agreements between the parties, so between our office and the defense, that certain facts exist. And if you are read a stipulation by our office or judge informs you that the stipulation exists, then you are to take that as if it's a testimony that came from that witness chair, uncontradicted, because all parties agree that it's there. Now, as it comes to looking at witnesses, you're going to hear from lay witnesses, meaning people who may have witnessed something particular or seen something particular in this case. You'll hear from law enforcement. You'll hear from experts. And judge will explain to you the role of experts in this case at the appropriate time. But as you listen to them, you'll have the opportunity to judge their credibility and their believability. And so you may ask how you do that. I'll just say simply, just like you're judging my credibility and my believability right now, those same tools that you've used throughout your lives, that's what we're asking you to bring to the table as you deliberate, as you listen to this case, and as you ultimately deliberate. I'll tell you, you didn't leave your common sense in the parking lot when you parked today. You brought it with you. That's why you all are sitting here right now. That's why we went through that painstaking process of picking jurors over the last day and a half, so that we could make sure to pick folks who could well and truly try the facts of this case in this courtroom and ultimately return a verdict. And we'll be asking that you return a verdict of guilty. You are to try this case based on the evidence that you hear in this courtroom, not someplace else, not thoughts that you may have about X, Y, or Z, but what you hear in this courtroom during this trial. Now, my final ask of you here is going to be simple. I'm going to ask that you consider something that's called Hakim's razor. Hakim's razor is a principle that suggests that with all things being considered, the simplest explanation is the truth. With all things being considered, the simplest explanation is the truth. We believe that the simple explanation is that Nathaniel David Rowland kidnapped Samantha Josephson. We believe that the simple explanation is that Nathaniel David Rowland murdered Samantha Josephson. And we believe the simple explanation in this case is that Nathaniel David Rowland possessed a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. And we believe those things because it's not only the simple explanation, but it's the right explanation. And ultimately, after you hear all of the evidence in this case, we'll be asking that you return a verdict of guilty of all counts because he is indeed guilty in all counts. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience.
By the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. The number 12. I want each of you to remember that number. It's important. We'll get back to it. For now, just keep it in your mind. The number 12. And I want to talk to you about a different number that has come to light during the course of this case, and that's 0. That's important. It's incredibly important. But also remember number 12. Now, 0 signifies several things in this case, and I'll start with the first one. It signifies the number of times that anyone sitting over there will have a bad or disrespectful thing to say about Samantha Josephson. 0. It just will not happen. It's also the number of times you will hear anyone over at this table say she is to blame for what happened to her. 0. It is not her fault. And I want to make that perfectly clear today. And I submit to you, by the time this trial is all said and done, and you have heard all the evidence in this case, you will be saying the same thing about Nathaniel Rowland. That it is not his fault, and he is not to blame for the death of Samantha Josephson. Now, by all accounts, it sounds like Samantha was a quite remarkable young lady with a bright future. Smart, motivated, and funny. And I submit to you, one heck of a fighter. You've heard the state lay out what they believe happened that night, that in her final moments, that Samantha fought. She fought for her life. She fought hard. She fought hard. She was repeatedly stabbed with what they're calling a sharp weapon, a multi-tool, a blade no longer than about 2 inches. In the close, confined, and cramped back seat of a car. She fought, kicking and punching and clawing at the person attacking her. The state wants you to believe is Nathaniel Rowland, trying with everything in her power, fighting. And you've heard, tragically, that same day that she was last seen at the bird dog, she's later found. And she's found out in Clarendon County. But that's not where Samantha's story ends. You'll hear how crime scene agents with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, they get called out to Clarendon County right away, and they rush out there to begin that important job of processing what they've been called out to see. And these agents, they're not going to have a whole lot of information as they're getting into Clarendon County, and that's typical at the beginning of the story. But they've come prepared with the tools they need to get the job done. And so as they arrive, pull up on the scene, they're immediately going to work. They're observing the area, documenting with photographs and notes, and collecting items. And they see this is a wooded area, surrounded by dirt roads. And again, they're documenting, taking pictures, making notes. And as they're getting there and observing the area, these two crime scene agents from SLED, they see 2 beer cans, some cigarette butts nearby. One agent documents those with photographs, while the other documents in their notes, eventually going back and sticking flags where each one is. Maybe they're important, maybe they're not, they don't know. They don't have a lot of information. Their job is to collect that information, try to figure out what exactly happened. Same scene, they notice tire tracks and muddy ruts. Again, continuing to document and take notes. And as I told you, 2 agents on scene in Clarendon County. And they're doing the same thing as they approach that wooded area where Samantha is laying just 20 feet off of that dirt road. And they notice what they describe as a footpath from the road to where her body lays. Again, they document it, take pictures, put it in their notes. They make notes about what she's wearing, her broken shoe, that she only has one earring in her ear. And they note the numerous wounds on her body, all over her body, from the top of her head down to her feet. And they also note what looks like drag marks on her back and her shoulder. And note that her fingernails have been ripped and torn because she fought. They spend hours at that scene, these 2 crime scene agents, taking tons of pictures, making their observations about the area, leaving nothing unturned, making their notes. And before Samantha's body is carried off, they need a couple of more things. They want to get her fingerprints. They want to scrape her fingernails. And they take a swab of her mouth for DNA purposes. Eventually taking all of these things, along with those beer cans and those cigarette butts, back to the lab at SLED. Now, fast forward to Saturday, March 30th, in the early morning hours, around 2:30. And you've heard Mr. Gibson talk about that when Nate gets pulled over by the police. Those same two crime scene agents I've been talking about that were in Clarendon County, they're called to come out to that car on Saluda Avenue and immediately began the task at hand, documenting that car, observing it, making notes, collecting items. And over the next couple of days, they spend a lot of time with that car, going back and doing the exact same thing, swabbing. They swab the steering wheel, the gear shift, the door handles. They lift prints, take pictures, and collect items from that car. And again, taking all of those items back to the lab at SLED. And it's a whirlwind of an investigation. There are a lot of people involved at this point. There's a third crime scene agent with SLED, Dawn Claycomb. She goes out to the autopsy of Samantha Josephson, collects more evidence that maybe wasn't collected at the scene. Again, getting her fingerprints, taking prints of her feet, another swab, and this time they swab both of her ankles. Okay? Now, that same night that Nate is pulled over by police from the Columbia Police Department, he's taken down to a Columbia Police Department building. And it's there that one of the CSI agents from SLED, one of the crime scene agents, Agent Zazik, you'll hear from her, she goes to CPD to take pictures of Nate that night, about 24 hours later. She wants to take pictures of his head, of his face, of his arms, and his hands. She takes pictures of him. They're looking for scratches or marks or bruises, but there are none. Zero. Again, all of these items that these crime scene agents from Clarendon County, from the Clarendon County scene, from the car, from Nate, the pictures, they take all of this back to the lab at SLED for the scientists there to process and analyze and interpret. But it would be months after the death of Samantha Josephson and months after the arrest of Nathaniel Rowland when the scientists would present their findings on their analysis to the investigators in this case. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to hear this number again, and that is 0. That's the amount of DNA on Samantha Josephson's body that matches Nathaniel Rowland. 0. It's not on her clothing. It's not under her ripped and torn fingernails. It's not on her ankles. But like I told you before, it's evident that Samantha was a fighter. You'll hear from Dr. Thomas Beaver. He was the medical examiner at MUSC. And I'm sure he will go into excruciating detail about the injuries she suffered from the top of her head to her feet. Her ripped and torn fingernails and her battered knuckles. She fought. And because she fought, she did get some evidence for you. That's right. Nathaniel's DNA is not there, but someone else's is. Multiple someones. And remember those swabs that the crime scene agents took from his car? From the steering wheel, from the gear shift, from the door handles. more DNA that does not belong to Nathaniel Rowland. All of the evidence that the state is going to show you and want to show you throughout this case is basically what Nathaniel does from March 29th in the afternoon hours to the evening hours into the early morning hours of March 30th. But he's not on trial for that. Ladies and gentlemen, there's zero evidence that Nathaniel Rowland was the one that kidnapped and killed Samantha Josephson. Now remember that number 12 I told you about at the very beginning, that important number? That number signifies you, the jury. And everyone at that table over there has been waiting since March 30th of 2019 to meet you guys. And I told you this number is important because it represents the first 12 people that will have all of the information, not just what's convenient for the narrative. The first 12 people not to jump to conclusions about this case. And the 12 people that will come back and tell the world that Nathaniel Rowland did not kidnap and kill Samantha Josephson, that Nathaniel Rowland is not guilty. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take about 5 minutes, and then we'll proceed with the first witness. Please go to the jury room. We have you come back in about 5 minutes. Please do not discuss the case. We'll be in recess for 5 minutes. That's why we try to make notes on who's who.
Please be seated.
Did you make? You ready for the jury?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, sir.
You can bring the jury. Very good. You may call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. The state calls Greg Corbishley.
Face the court. Sir, face the court.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give in this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. Please have a seat in the witness stand and state your full name on the record, and please spell your last name.
May I take my face mask off? Yes. Corbishley, Corbishley.
Mr. Corbishley, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sir, where are you from?
Charleston, South Carolina, since I was about 8 years old.
All right. And did you go to high school in that area?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where did you go to college?
I went to the University of South Carolina.
All right. What years were you at the University of South Carolina?
I started in 2014, graduated December of, 2014, excuse me. Graduated December of 2018.
All right. Can you tell this jury how you came to meet Samantha Josephson?
We met in the 5 Points area out at one of the bars. Struck a conversation. That's how I got to meet her.
All right. And where was Samantha from?
Robbinsville, New Jersey.
Do you know how she ended up here in Columbia?
She also went to the University of South Carolina.
Okay. Can you describe your relationship with her over the first couple of years of knowing her and her time in college?
For a little bit, we would, I guess, the way I would describe it is we were talking, we were more than friends, but we weren't quite to the stage of boyfriend and girlfriend. That happened for about a year, and then we decided to make it official, become boyfriend and girlfriend in the spring of 2017, I believe.
Okay. And as you were getting to know each other during those first couple of years and even beyond, what kinds of things did you do together?
We did everything together. I would say we kept in contact more than the average couple. You know, even when we were living 5 minutes apart, FaceTiming each other, checking in, go get food. We'd go to the 5 Points area together. We'd go to football games. We did pretty much everything together.
Right. And you said at some point things got a bit more serious between you. Is that right?
Yeah, spring of 2017, right before the summer.
And ultimately, you guys were actually in a relationship.
Yes, sir.
Cared for each other a great deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Loved one another.
Yeah.
And what were you studying at Carolina?
I was studying marketing in the business school with a minor in sports management.
How about Samantha?
Samantha was poli-sci with aspirations of going to law school.
Okay. And you said you graduated when?
December of 2018,
When was Samantha expected to graduate?
spring of that 2019,
Okay.
or May.
And you said that as far as after school, after graduation, each of you had plans. What were those plans?
So she had just gotten accepted into Drexel Law School on a full scholarship. I was still on the job search, but our plan was that she would go to Drexel, and due to the obviously difficult nature of law school, I wanted to make it a little easier, so my plan was to move up to Philadelphia and look for a job up there, and not live together per se at that point, but be close enough to where it wasn't going to be tough on either of us.
All right. I'm just going to
Going too close? There we go.
Drexel's in the Philadelphia area, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's turn your attention to March of 2019, specifically Thursday, March 28th of 2019. Where were you that day and what were you doing?
I was in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. I started the day off going to my brother's house, looking after his dog because he was at work. And then I was watching the March Madness games at night around 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Zero, move the mic.
Yeah, I just moved it just slightly. I was getting a little feedback.
Sorry.
There you go. So you said you were in Charleston and the NCAA tournament was going on?
Right, I was watching the game that started around 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Okay. Where was Samantha?
Samantha was in Columbia, South Carolina at her apartment.
Were you in contact with her that night?
I was in contact with her throughout the entire day.
Okay. What form of contact did you all have with each other?
FaceTime, text messages, calls, basically asking me to come up to Columbia that night to visit her.
Okay. And do you know generally what her plans were that night and who they were with?
Just her roommates and her friends, her extended friend group that didn't live with her. They were going to go out to the 5 Points area like any regular night at South Carolina.
And who is Tegan Berry?
Tegan Berry is one of her roommates and one of her very good friends.
Okay. And was she with her that night?
Yes.
All right. Could you tell and so you talked to Samantha by these different various platforms throughout the night, you said?
Yes, sir.
While she was still at home?
While she was still at the hub where she lives, yeah.
The hub. Okay. Where's the hub?
If my memory serves me correctly, from when I lived there, 1426 Main Street.
Okay. Could you tell when you were discussing with her, or when you were talking to her that night, whether she'd been drinking at all?
Yeah, I think, they had plans to go to the 5 Points area. They had a couple drinks. I'm not sure how many.
Okay. Was that unusual for her, or you, or her friends?
No.
All right. Now, without going into specifics, did she confide in you that night about some concerns that she had about her family at all?
Yes.
Some medical issues with a family member or something like that?
Yes.
Okay. So as a result of that, what did you tell her?
I told her to get her mind off of it, to go out with her friends, that she had just worked so hard, got into law school. She deserved to have a night to celebrate that and have fun with her friends. And I just told her to go out and have fun that night.
Okay. At the end of that conversation, what'd you do?
I believe I went to the gym right after that. The NCAA game had just ended, and I think it was around 9:30, 10. I headed over to my neighborhood gym.
All right. Did you talk to Samantha again?
I did a couple times while I was at the gym, while she was trying to convince me to come up to Columbia still.
Was that unusual for her to try to do that?
Absolutely not.
And did you go?
Most of the time, or pretty much every single time, yes. I had done that 2-hour drive quite a bit.
On this particular night, did you make the ride up to Columbia?
I did not.
How come?
Because she was supposed to be visiting 2 days later on Saturday. I always went to Columbia. We'd never I never had her come to Charleston, so we planned that trip, and she was supposed to come down, so I figured I'd see her in 2 days, just wait till then.
While you were at the gym, were you having contact with her throughout?
Yes.
Do you remember how?
I think I got a couple FaceTimes, a couple text messages, just the same thing, saying I really want you to come up to Columbia. I really need you to be with me tonight. I guess she was still thinking about the stuff that she had confided in me about, and just wanted me to be around to make her feel a little bit better.
So what time did you get home from the gym?
11:30
Okay.
p.m.
And when did you next have contact with Samantha?
As soon as I got home, once again, kind of more of the same stuff. I believe at that point they were leaving the hub to go to their friend Edgar's house, which is about 2 minutes outside of the 5 Points area.
And so based on your conversations with her and your texts, what time did she get to the 5 Points area that night?
I would say about 12:15, 12:30.
Okay. And where did she go? Do you know what establishment?
She went to Bird Dog, which is, yeah.
Is that a place you had been before?
I'm sorry?
Is that a place you had been before?
Yeah, numerous times.
And she had been there numerous times?
Yeah, it was a regular place that we went to.
All right, so as the night progressed between approximately 12:30 and say 2 a.m., what was the nature of your contact with her during that period?
It was mostly just telling me just kind of out there things just about the bar, if she saw anyone that I knew, just casual conversation, and then mixed in with, I really want you to still come up to Columbia and drive up.
At some point late in the evening, did you actually speak to her via telephone call?
I did around 2:04, well, a little bit in that 12:30 to 1 o'clock a couple times, and then the last time was around 2:04 a.m.
Okay. When you spoke to her on the phone, what was she doing?
At what point?
I'm sorry, thank you. The approximate 2:04 a.m. call, what was she doing?
At that point, she was leaving the bar. She told me she had called an Uber, and she was waiting on that to go back home to the hub.
Was that unusual for her to, or any of you in the group, to take an Uber like that?
No, Ubers are pretty frequent. There's not really another avenue of transportation, and the hub is so far away that no one wants to make that walk.
So what happened next?
We got off the phone. Me and her had our locations shared with each other through the Find My Friends app. And I tracked it just to make sure she got home safe, as I always did.
And I'm sorry, I kind of stopped you there. Can you describe what that Find My Friend app is and how that works?
Right, so it'll pinpoint where whoever it is that shares their location, where they are, and it'll give you a constant update by the second about where their location is. And like I said, it's pretty frequently updated. So if you're in a car, it'll track it, as you're moving.
Okay. And so why were you looking at where she was going?
I just want to make sure she got home safely.
Okay. So, got a map here of Columbia. And if you could describe what you've been talking about in terms of the bird dog in that area and the hub. what you see. Can you see it?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't think I understand the question.
Just the relationship between the hub and the bird dog.
I mean, they're pretty far, as you can see.
All right. And so when you began tracking her phone as she departs the bird dog, which direction was it headed?
Where that yellow pin is with the bird dog, it went south of that.
Okay, so this way?
Yeah, the complete opposite direction of where you would go if you were going towards the hub.
Okay. And when you saw that she was going in a different direction, what did you do?
I called her, first texted her. At first I really didn't think anything of it. I thought maybe they're going back to Edgar's or someone's house after. But there was no response and no answer to the call.
And this might sound like a stupid question, but how did you know that that was the wrong direction, headed this way, as opposed to going to the hub?
Because I lived there and I had taken that Uber route very many times.
You had previously lived at the hub yourself.
Yeah.
So you said you tried to reach her directly.
Tried to reach her by phone, didn't, it rang, went straight, then went to voicemail, tried texting, both of us had read receipts on, it just said delivered, and I never got the read receipt back.
And that would indicate to you what, for those of us that are not as technologically inclined, what does that mean?
That she hadn't read the message, or that she wasn't around her phone, or, you know, for whatever reason, she hadn't looked at the message personally. That would be what I would think.
And so you continued to follow her whereabouts.
Right.
Find my friend.
Right, and then I think I tried contacting her by Snapchat as well, and no answer there. I believe her location stopped. It stopped getting shared with me, which had never happened before in our relationship.
About what time?
About 2:30, 2:40 a.m.
Okay. And the general area in which that happened?
That was the Montgomery Avenue. Was the last place that I saw it tracked to.
And so can you describe what we're looking at here on the map?
Yeah, I mean, that's Montgomery Avenue, that's Bird Dog right in the middle, and as you can see, the hub they're on opposite sides of each other.
And you said that this area,
Was the last area that the Find My Friends app showed her location at.
what did you think was happening at this point?
And I really didn't know what to think. I thought maybe she left her phone in an Uber, and the Uber went home. I called her roommates to ask, do you know if she's home? Are you guys home? I didn't really know what to think at this point. I just kept trying to call her just to see if she would answer.
And did you actually end up speaking to her roommates at all?
Yeah, I think I had some texts with them around 3 or 3:30. I don't really remember the time, but I had told them that I had told them the situation, and I think they came to the same conclusion or assumption that I did, that maybe she dropped her phone or something like that. But
And so to your knowledge, did her friends actually go looking for her that night?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think they did. I believe they did.
But you didn't find out that they had made contact with her in any way?
No, I think I went to sleep around 5 a.m.
5 a.m.?
Yeah,
And so that would have been, we were talking about Thursday night, but this is really
Friday morning.
Friday morning.
Yes,
right?
sir.
Okay, and that's March 29th,
Yes, sir.
2019, correct? Did you get any sleep that night?
I tried to get my mind off of it, and I did go to sleep probably around 5:30 a.m.
Tell us what you did I'm not going to say the next morning, but a few hours later after you slept for a little bit.
I woke up, I think, around 11 a.m. To calls from her roommate, Carly, saying that Samantha had never returned home.
Can't say what they told you.
Oh,
but
excuse me.
That's all right.
I apologize.
But you can say her roommate called you.
Roommate called me.
Right. So based on that, what did you do?
I drove up to Columbia.
You still hadn't heard from her at any point? From
No,
Samantha?
I hadn't heard anything.
No responses to any of your messages of any kind?
No, nothing. No read receipts, no nothing.
So when you got to Columbia, what did you do?
There was a police officer there.
Where?
At the hub already, and then I went down and I gave them the information from the previous night that I just gave to you.
When you say there's a police officer at the hub, had that officer, to your knowledge, already been there speaking with the roommates?
Yes.
Okay. And you just happened to see the officer when you got there?
No,
as well,
I went up to the room, and then the officer asked if she could interview me down by her police car on Main Street.
Okay. So you spoke to the officer, told him what you knew, and after that, what did you do in Columbia?
After that, we went to the Montgomery Avenue point. We started knocking on doors, asking if anyone had seen anything suspicious, heard anything. We looked around. We looked like on the grass and for her phone, any trace of that she had been there. We didn't find anything, and neither had the neighbors heard anything.
What came after that?
After that, we went to the 5 Points area to see if we could ask some of the managers to look at their surveillance footage to see if she had gotten in a car, to see which way she went, anything to, kind of give us a little inkling of where she might be. We went to Breakers first because it has a pretty big view of the main street of 5 Points. They didn't have anything. So then we went to Bird Dog, and that's when we saw the footage of her getting into the black Chevy Impala.
You actually saw that yourself?
Yeah,
Did you recognize the vehicle at all?
I did not.
What was next?
Next, I believe I went.
Well, let me ask you this. Did Samantha work back then?
She did.
Where did she work?
She worked at Liberty in the Vista.
Liberty, is that Liberty Tap Room?
Liberty Tap Room in the Vista.
What was her job there?
Waitress.
Was that just on the side while she was going to school?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Did you try to contact them at all?
I did, and apparently she had a shift at about 11 a.m. that morning that she had never shown up for.
Friday morning.
Friday morning, yes, sir.
They hadn't seen or heard from her.
Hadn't seen or heard from her, and that was very uncharacteristic of her.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead with what you're saying.
After that, after we found out that there was a black Chevy Impala, we started searching for any black Chevy Impala we could see in the 5 Points area. We came across one, we alerted officers to it. We looked at it, and there was nothing in there. We looked in the window, there was nothing. Then I got a call, I met up with another one of my friends, and we went back to the Montgomery area where her phone was last tracked. We just kept knocking on doors, looking for any inkling, because it was really the only thing we had to go off of, and also further looking for a black Chevy Impala, possibly in that area, parked in her driveway.
Did you see any Impalas in that area?
I did not.
Did you speak to some of the residents in those areas?
One or two families.
Okay. Nothing came from that?
Nothing.
All right. And so by the time you're doing this, approximately what time of day is this on Friday that you rode over there?
Then I went back to Montgomery.
Yeah.
I'd say about 10 p.m.,
Okay.
10:30 p.m.
All right. Was
Maybe
that
a
it?
little bit earlier, maybe 9:30,
Okay.
around that time frame.
Was that it for the night, or what did you do after that?
After that, her parents had driven down, and I was in contact with them to meet them at the police station. The investigator told me to come to the police station as well.
Did some of her roommates go there as well?
They did later in the night, yes.
Okay. And,
I think I was the first one there.
And when you got to the police station, did you meet with investigators?
I did. They took me into a room and asked me further questions.
And essentially, did they have you kind of lay out what you've laid out for this jury here today?
Yes.
Okay. At the time of that interview, that was late Friday night, is that right? Or are we now
Late.
into Saturday morning now?
Yeah, I guess technically Saturday morning.
It's after midnight?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So at that time, we're about 24 hours removed from her being gone, correct?
Right.
Okay. When you were being interviewed by the Columbia Police Department at that time, had you been given any information about where she was?
No.
What happened after you completed your interview with them?
They took me back down to, I guess, what the waiting room is, or the main entrance room. I was surprised to see her roommates there. I was unaware that they were there. We waited for about 10, 15 minutes, and then they led us into what I would call a conference room, and there were Mr. and Mrs. Josephson sitting there, looking distraught. First thing that went through my head was, I hope their look is just because they haven't found her yet. As you said, or as I confirmed, they hadn't told me what had actually happened yet. They broke the news to us right there. And just after that, I just broke down, felt my legs collapse from under me, and, just kind of you almost black out, just with disbelief.
When you spoke to her on the phone, when you spoke to Sammy on the phone at approximately 2:04 a.m., was that the last time you saw or spoke to her?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
By the defense. Thank you. You may step down. Call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. State calls Tegan Berry. You say your name one more time for the court reporter.
Tegan Berry.
Good afternoon, Miss Berry. Please tell the jury a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm from New Jersey originally. I'm from Clinton, New Jersey, and then I did 1 year of community college at home before I transferred to USC my sophomore year.
And when did you graduate from USC?
The same May that Sammy would have graduated of 2019.
May of 2019. And when we say USC, you mean?
University of South Carolina.
And what do you do now?
I'm a communications coordinator up in New Jersey.
You briefly mentioned USC. You didn't start there as a freshman.
No, I was at a community college my freshman year, and then I transferred in my sophomore year with my roommate Jacqueline. She was also transferring in, so we kind of came together.
Was Jacqueline also a sophomore at the time?
Yes, she was also a sophomore at the time.
Did you know anybody else at USC before you got here?
My older brother went here before me as well, so I knew him and some of his friends, but it was really the transition happened because Jacqueline was going as well.
And did Jacqueline know anybody at the University of South Carolina?
We had a few other people from our high school who have been here, so yeah, we knew those high school people.
Was she a roommate throughout your time at USC?
Yeah, we were roommates all 3 years. We lived in that same apartment in the hub.
Did Jacqueline introduce you to some other girls?
Yes, Jacqueline is kind of the reason that I met Sammy and Carly and Jordan and Jenny, so yes.
And for the record, what is Jacqueline's last name?
Chizeski.
And who are some of the people that she introduced you to?
Sammy and Carly would be some of them. Jenny, also my other roommate. We've met kind of a bunch of people together. We came to school together.
Can you get closer to the mic?
Oh, sorry. Yes, we met a bunch of people together, Sammy and Carly and Jenny being some of them.
And did you and Sammy become friends after that?
Yes,
Did you ever live with Sammy?
I did. Yes, my senior year, I lived with Sammy.
And what was Sammy like?
She was goofy and silly. She was super caring. She's passionate. She's easygoing. She was just kind of the ideal person.
Is it fair to say you and Sammy were pretty close?
Yes.
What sort of things did you enjoy doing as a group?
We would go to football games. We would go out and get food. We would go out to 5 Points. We kind of did everything together.
Did you guys go to 5 Points pretty often?
Yes,
Is it fair to say that you were familiar with the area?
absolutely.
I want to draw your attention to March of 2019. Would this have been your senior year of college?
Yes.
Is there anything special you had going on in March? Anything you were looking forward to?
Yeah, I think we had spring break in that March, so we did that. Like Greg said, that Sammy had just gotten into law school, so we were just kind of celebrating the end of our school year as final semester seniors.
Thursday, March 28th of 2019. Were you in Columbia that day?
I was, yes.
Was there anything specific about this Thursday that you remember?
No, nothing out of the ordinary.
You mentioned spring break. Was everybody back in town by then?
Yes.
Was Jenny in town by then?
Oh, sorry. No, Jenny was not in town. Jenny did not come with us on spring break. She was in the Netherlands.
What was she doing in the Netherlands? Do you
She was visiting her boyfriend at the time.
What were your plans for that Thursday evening?
Just to go out. The Thursday is basically a Friday for us, so
Why is that?
no one takes Friday classes.
I'm sorry, if you could just maybe repeat for the court.
Oh, sorry. We just didn't take Friday classes.
Did you have any friends over that night?
Yeah, some of our friends came over, Edgar being one of them. I think Emil was there, Shannon, and Daniel.
And that would be where specifically?
At the hub, with the roommates that were home.
Did you go straight to 5 Points when you left the hub?
We did not. We went to our friend Edgar's house, who lives very close to 5 Points, so we went there so we could walk right in.
And who is Edgar?
Edgar is also someone we've met. He is from the Saluda, I believe. He's friends with Carly and them.
Was his house near 5 Points?
Yes.
At some point, did you guys leave Edgar's?
Yes, we left Edgar's and walked right to Bird Dog.
Did everybody in the group who was at Edgar's go to Bird Dog?
Yes.
Did Jacqueline join you guys at Bird Dog?
Jacqueline walked in momentarily, but she did not stay long.
How did you guys get downtown?
I believe Edgar probably drove, and then we walked from his house.
Is Edgar's house pretty close to 5 Points?
Yes,
And where did you go when you got to 5 Points?
right to Bird Dog.
Just to clarify for the jury, what is Bird Dog?
Bird Dog is just a bar downtown. It's somewhere we went to very frequently, just an average bar, cheap drinks. Went there with our friends all the time.
And was Sammy with you when you guys got to Bird Dog?
She was.
Do you remember what she was wearing that night?
I do. She was wearing an orange, bright orange top, black jeans, I think platform sandals, and my white bralette.
Beg the court's indulgence, Your Honor. Permission to approach the witness, Your Honor. Handing you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 1, do you recognize the person in that photo?
Yep, that's Sammy.
And by Sammy, we mean,
Samantha Josephson.
and what is she wearing in that photograph?
An orange top, a white bralette, platform sandals, and black jeans.
And is this the outfit she was wearing that evening?
Correct.
Your Honor, at this time, the state moves to enter what's been previously marked for ID purposes as State's Exhibit 1.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
It is admitted without objection.
What were you doing inside the bar that night?
I think we were just listening to music, hanging out with our friends, talking.
Do you remember seeing Samantha inside Bird Dog?
I do.
What was she doing?
I mean, I'm sure I've seen her at multiple points in the night, but one of the last times I remember seeing her, she was over in the corner on the phone.
Was it common for you to split up when you got to a bar?
Yeah, I mean, we're all here, we all have a bunch of friends, so it was common that we would see someone else we know kind of wander and do what we were doing.
At some point, did you realize Samantha wasn't at Bird Dog anymore?
I did not.
And was it common for members of your group, your friend group, to leave in shifts?
Yes.
When did you realize that Samantha wasn't with the group?
It really wasn't until Greg contacted us later in the night.
Would you say it's out of the ordinary for Greg to reach out if he couldn't get in touch with Samantha?
Nope.
What did you do after Greg reached out?
I opened my Find My Friends. We all tracked each other as well. So I noticed the same location that he had previously brought up, and we went to that location and checked it that night.
Was that the location, intersection between South Ott and Montgomery?
Correct.
Were you able to make contact with Sammy?
No.
What happened next?
After we went to that location, we kind of looked around. We noticed some cars. It looked like a sorority girl's house and kind of an abandoned house. We didn't really think too much of it. Maybe her phone was in an Uber or something, if it was stopped there. And then we went back to our friend Emil's house that we were at previously, and then we Ubered home.
At that location, did you see, and by that I mean South Ott and Montgomery, did you see any sign of Samantha?
No.
Did you see any of her belongings?
No.
Were you concerned at this point?
Not really. Like we said, I thought maybe her phone was left in an Uber or something along the lines of that.
And what did you do next?
After that, we left Emil's house and went back home and went to bed.
And was Samantha at the apartment when you got home?
She was not. No, her door was still open for her room.
Explain for the jury where Samantha's bedroom door was in relation to yours.
Yeah, our room was kind of a V, so the kitchen was over here, and mine and Sammy's rooms were right here. Carly's over here, and then the other two were back there. So I had to walk past her room to get into my own.
Did you notice anything when you walked past her room on your way to bed?
Her work shoes were still out. I noticed that, and I knew that she had work early the next day, so that kind of stood out.
And what happened after you walked past her room? What did you do then?
Just to sleep.
So Friday, March 29th would be the next day, but technically those hours overlap. What time did you wake up?
I think around 10:30.
Was Samantha at the apartment when you woke up?
She was not.
Was her door still open?
Yes.
Did you notice anything out of the ordinary when you peeked in her room?
Nothing out of the ordinary, just I noticed that her shoes were still there, and I think her shift was starting soon after.
And where did Samantha work at the time?
Liberty Tap Room.
Did you reach out to anybody at Liberty Tap Room?
We did, yes. We contacted them and asked if she was there, and they said that she was not.
Was it unlike Samantha to miss work without calling in sick?
Absolutely.
Were you concerned at this point?
Yes.
What happened next?
Well, before that, I texted my roommates in a group chat, and I said something was kind of off, and we all came out into the living room and talked a little bit about the next steps, and from there we decided to get in the car and go back to that Montgomery Street house.
Back to the same location you were at the night before.
Correct.
Did you see any sign of Samantha?
No.
Did you look anywhere else for her?
While we were there, we also contacted jail. We called the hospital. We called just a bunch of locations. We thought that if she wasn't home, there was a potential she might be.
And did you find her?
We did not.
What happened after you left that location? South Ott and Montgomery. Where'd you go?
Yeah, we went back to the hub, and I think that's when we contacted the police. We kind of did our own little search in before that, because we thought that there was a 24-hour rule before you could file a missing persons report. So we were kind of just doing our own search in the meantime.
Did an officer come out and take the report?
Yeah, the officer informed us that that wasn't the case and came and spoke with all of us.
Did that officer come to the hub to speak with you guys?
Yep.
What happened after the officer left?
When the officer left, I think we just kept searching. I know we went back to that house at one point. We also broke into Sammy's laptop and looked through her emails, and that's where we found a Uber report that her ride had been canceled by the driver.
By the person involved in the If I showed you a photo of that canceled receipt, would you recognize it?
Yep.
I'm approaching the witness with what's been marked as State's Exhibit 2 for ID purposes.
Oh,
Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is that?
The Uber report that we pulled up on her laptop.
Your Honor, at this time, the state moves to enter into evidence what's been previously marked for ID purposes as State's Exhibit 2.
Says defense.
No objection, Your Honor.
It's admitted without objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. After you saw the receipt, what happened next?
I think at that point Greg was there. We might have gone back to that house again. We visited a few times that day, and then we went downtown to do our own searching. As Greg said, we first went to Breakers and looked there. It's on the corner. There's a lot of cameras right around there. They didn't have any cameras for us to look at, so we went to Bird Dog where we were all last.
I'm going to back you up just a little bit.
Sure thing.
So first, did you mention, by location, do you mean South Ott and Montgomery?
Yes.
Did you see any sign of Sammy there?
No.
And after that, where did you go next?
Then we went downtown and we looked at Breakers and didn't get anything there, so we went to Bird Dog.
Were you able to look at anything at Bird Dog?
Yes, we had some mutual friends at Bird Dog, so we were able to go upstairs and look at their video footage. We kind of had an idea of when the last time we communicated with her was. We went to that point and we saw everything.
Did you see Samantha on that video?
Did.
Did you see the black Impala on that video?
Did.
Do you recognize that car at all?
No.
After you left Bird Dog, where did you go?
I'm not entirely sure what we did next. I think we probably went back to the hub again.
Were you contacted at some point by officers from the Columbia Police Department?
Yes.
Did you go there to meet with them?
Yep.
Did they question you?
Yes.
Do you remember if you were questioned by yourself or were you questioned in a group?
I was questioned by myself.
And at the point when you were speaking with the investigators, did you know whether Samantha was alive or dead?
I did not.
And to be clear, the last time you spoke to or saw Samantha was at Bird Dog?
Correct.
And did you ever hear from Samantha again?
I did not.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Dr. Spence.
No questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down. We'll call your next witness.
State calls Amanda Moskaitis.
Amanda Moskaitis, Moskaitis.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Moskaitis, can you tell the jury where you currently work?
Yes, I'm a special agent with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division.
And what do you do for SLED?
I'm the supervisor over SkyX,
And how long have you worked there?
about 2 months.
Where did you work previously?
The Columbia Police Department,
How long did you work for Columbia Police Department?
about 4.5 years.
And what was your position at Columbia?
I was a master patrol officer on the community response team prior to leaving.
And what did you do as a master patrol officer?
I would assist with taking calls for service through dispatch, listen to community complaints and handle them as such, attend community events, perform traffic stops.
All right, so I'm going to take you back to March of 2019. Was that your position back then?
No, ma'am, I was just a patrol officer at the time.
And what did you do as a patrol officer?
Very similar, took calls for service and conducted traffic stops, conduct property checks.
And in March 29th of 2019, did you receive a call?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you become involved in this case?
I was dispatched to the call. It was probably about 1300 hours or 1 p.m. I believe.
And can you tell the jury where you went?
Yes, ma'am. So that day I was on patrol and I was dispatched to 1426 Main Street, which is located downtown.
And is that in Richland County?
Yes, ma'am. It's in the city of Columbia, County of Richland.
All right. And what did you do upon your arrival?
Upon arrival, I went upstairs into the apartment building and I made contact at the listed apartment, although at this time I cannot recall the specific apartment.
Do you remember who you spoke with?
I don't remember her name at this time.
Would seeing your report help refresh your memory?
Yes, ma'am.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? I hand you something and ask you if you recognize it.
Yes.
And what is that?
This is the incident report that I wrote.
And does having that report help refresh your memory?
Yes.
So can you tell the jury, where did you go?
Yes, so I would have responded to 1426 Main Street, apartment 901, and made contact with Ms. Berry.
Okay. And did you know anything about the case prior to your arrival?
I would have only been going off of what dispatch had provided me prior to making contact with Ms. Berry, but at this time I cannot recall specifically what was provided to us.
All right. And based on the information that Ms. Berry provided, what did you do?
I made contact with an employee at the Liberty Tap Room restaurant located within the Vista on Gervais Street to confirm whether or not Miss Samantha had arrived at work or had called in to say that she wasn't coming to work.
And had she called in?
No, she had not.
Had she arrived at work?
She had not.
So what did you do after that?
After that, I also informed my corporal at the time as to the information that I was provided and that I had made contact with a manager at Liberty Tap Room and informed my corporal as well that she had not showed up to work and she had not called in.
And did you speak with anyone else besides Ms. Berry?
Yeah, while I was in my patrol car, I had begun writing my report at the time and I made contact with her boyfriend, Mr. Gregory.
And without telling us exactly what he said, what information were you provided?
He was just able to provide further information from his point of view, from what he had experienced when he was attempting to remain in contact with Miss Samantha.
Did you get any information about the last known whereabouts of Ms. Josephson?
I did. He was able to provide information in regards to where he was able to last track her, and that came back within another part of the city, which we at the time considered South Region, which encompasses the 5 Points area and just outside the 5 Points area, such as Rosewood and Shandon.
Does it also encompass Montgomery Avenue and South Ott?
It does, yes.
And is that in Richland County?
It is.
And were any of them able to give you the last known whereabouts of Samantha physically, where they last saw her?
The last known location that I was provided was in 5 Points outside of Bird Dog.
And is that in Richland County?
Yes, it is.
Were you able to speak to her parents?
I did speak with her parents that day as well, only over the phone though at that time.
And at that time, did they know her location?
They did not.
So based on this information of no one knowing where she was, what happened?
Based off of the circumstances and the information I was provided, I informed my corporal of all the information that I had, informed him that I was completing a missing person report, and the information that he was given was then passed up through to investigations.
And was anything done in terms of letting people know that she was missing?
Yes, ma'am. While I was still on the call, I did ask Ms. Teagan if she had any pictures of Samantha that we would be able to provide to our investigators. It is standard when completing a missing person report to try and ask for pictures. It helps identify her within a BOLO, which is a be on the lookout, and all of that information was submitted to our investigator.
So, and you said a BOLO is a be on the lookout?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that normal procedure when something or someone is missing?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 4 and ask if you recognize this.
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
This is the BOLO that was issued for Ms. Samantha Josephson.
And is that a fair and accurate copy of what was sent out back in March 29th of 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
This time, Your Honor, I ask to introduce State's Exhibit number 4 into evidence. I would object, Your Honor.
All right. Offered an objection. I haven't seen it. And what's the basis for the objection?
Hearsay.
And who generated this flyer again?
Who created this information?
It would have been the lead investigator, and I believe the investigator's name is on the BOLO.
And is it kept in the normal course of your business?
Yes, it would have been emailed to our city-issued email address.
It's admitted over objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. So would this be on the lookout flyer that was given to the public?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
Was it also given to Columbia Police Department?
Yes.
Thank you for the bill. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
I have no questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down. Your next witness.
State calls Marcus Williams.
Please swear or affirm the testimony you give in this case to be true and whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. Take the witness stand and state your full name for the record.
My name is Marcus Williams.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
How you doing?
Well, thank you. And I just need you to make sure you speak up so the entire jury can hear you.
Okay.
How old are you, sir?
I'm 49,
And where are you from?
Columbia, South Carolina.
Did you go to school here?
Yeah, I went to W.J. Keenan.
All right, and you have family here in town?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you married?
Yes, sir.
All right, what kind of work have you done through your career?
Well, I worked for the city of Columbia for the last 10 years and till I got hurt, and that's how I became an Uber driver.
Okay. So after working for the city, you had some type of work type injury, you said?
Yes, sir.
All right, and you became an Uber driver. What does becoming an Uber driver entail? What did you have to do to become an Uber driver?
Well, you have to send your license, registration, and copy of your insurance, and a copy of your car,
What kind of car?
a Dodge Charger.
Okay, okay.
You send all that in, and it takes like, I think, 42 or 72 hours for them to approve you, do a background check and all that.
Okay. And so once you submit it, like you said, your license, your insurance, copy of your car, at that point you can be approved?
Yes, sir.
Were you approved?
Yes, sir.
All right. And explain to the jury, tell the jury again what kind of car you were driving at the time?
I was driving a 2011 Dodge Charger,
What color was it?
charcoal gray.
And so about how long had you been an Uber driver before the incident that we're talking here, so which is March of 2019?
I think a couple months, about 3 or 4 months, I think.
All right. Was there kind of a process that you would go through as an Uber driver if you got a call?
Yeah, when you get a call, it'll come up with who you have to pick up and where the destination you have to go to.
Okay. So you pointed you were holding your hand out. So kind of explain that process. If a call comes through, where does the call come to?
Like if I'm riding, the phone will ring, it just get a little ring and then you'll see it. It'll come to my phone,
Okay.
and then it'll hit it, it'll tell you what destination, where your client that you have to pick up.
All right. So if somebody wanted to order an Uber, I guess that's the way you say it. Somebody wants to order an Uber. They go into an app of some sort?
Yeah, they go to an Uber app, and once they go on the app, it shows them the car, the person, your ratings, and all that.
Okay. And when you say ratings, tell us what you mean by that.
Like the comments from other people saying like your car was clean, very good driver, and stuff like that.
Okay. Did you have ratings?
Yes, sir.
What were your ratings?
All my ratings was good. If you look on my app, I had a 5-star. Car kept clean. I always get tips.
All right. And so somebody would order that Uber. The call would come through. You'd get a notice that the person was trying to reach a driver.
Yes, sir.
And so would their information come to you?
Yes, sir.
What information would you receive?
I would receive the name and the destination where I have to pick them up at.
Okay. And would your information go to that person?
Yes, sir.
What information about you would go to that person?
My picture, the color of the car, and yeah, that's it.
Okay. Now, if we were to focus a little bit more to March of 2019, March 29th, actually, 2019, do you remember getting a call, a particular call or a series of calls?
Yes, sir.
Tell us what you remember about those calls.
I used to work the 5 Points area down there. I worked the 5 Points area with the college kids.
Okay.
And I was already on a call, and I got the call to go pick the young lady up.
Okay. And when you said the young lady, you're referring to Miss Josephson?
Yes, ma'am. yes, sir.
No.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. The voice does it sometimes. So you received this call to pick up Miss Josephson. What did you do next?
Every time I receive a call, I always call the client to let them know I'm on the way or I'm outside or something like that.
Okay.
But when I received the call, I headed towards Hardin and Divine, I think. And I called her while I was on the way there, but she never answered the phone, so I circled around the block. I always give them like about 5 or 10 minutes because, you know, they be here and there. They don't really be at the spot where they're supposed to be.
Okay.
So I rode around for a minute. I called her again. Nobody answered the phone. And then once you get to your destination, after so many minutes, it'll come up as cancel your ride if your rider didn't show up.
Okay.
And so when I was riding, I waited. The cancel thing showed up. I think I circled like 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
But I never got in contact with her, never saw her. So it said cancel your ride, and I just hit cancel.
All right. Now I want to and thank you for that. I want to go back through just a couple things you said. You said that sometimes the person is not where they're supposed to be.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Like say they might tell you to pick them up at the destination might be Bird Dog, but they might be across the street at the little store they have right there on the corner.
Okay.
So that's why I always call, because a lot of them don't ever be at the spot you're supposed to. So I just call them, let them know I'm in the area, and let them know where I'm at, so they can meet me where it is.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so are they able to kind of pinpoint their location based on the Uber app?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. And so in this instance, you received the call. You went to the 5 Points area, and as you got to the area, based on your normal procedure, you made the call to Ms. Josephson?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you said there was not a response?
No, sir.
All right. And so you said you circled for a moment?
Yes, sir.
Still no response. And so this cancel feature happens. All right, what happened when that cancel feature happened here? Explain that. I want to make sure that
After you get to your destination, the client has like, I think 5 or I don't know exactly how many minutes to get in the car. And once that time limit goes, the cancel thing will come up and says your ride ain't show up, cancel your ride.
all right. And so this ride was canceled.
Yes, sir.
All right, what did you do next?
I think I went on by my, I don't know if I got another call or I just went on by my business.
Okay. Did you ever pick up Samantha Josephson that night?
No, sir.
To your knowledge, did you ever lay eyes on her?
No, sir.
Did she ever approach your vehicle to try to get into your vehicle?
No, sir.
All right. Was there a point in time when you learned that there had been some type of happening with Samantha Josephson?
Yes, sir. I think, I don't know if it was the next day or the day after. My brother-in-law is a lieutenant at the city.
Okay, and let me say, you can't tell me what a person
Okay,
said to
okay,
you, but
okay.
you can tell me what you did as a result of conversations.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I got a phone call after I heard they said what happened to Samantha. They called me, the city police called me, asked me would I come down there. I volunteered to come down there.
Okay, okay, so you received a call from the City of Columbia Police?
Yes, sir.
They asked you to come down to the department. Did they tell you why? Well, what did you do as a result of them calling?
I went down there.
Okay.
They told me why,
Okay.
and I went down there.
And what did you do when you got there?
They investigated me, and then they asked me for would I swab, can he swab my mouth? And I told them, yeah, I volunteered to do it.
Okay, and the swabbing of your mouth, was that, to your knowledge, a DNA sample?
I guess, yes, sir.
Okay, and so you voluntarily did that?
Yes, sir.
Why is that?
Because I have nothing to hide. I was just doing the Uber job.
Okay. After you gave that swab and talked to the City of Columbia, what happened after that? What, if anything, happened after that?
No, they just let me go, told me they'll call me when they need me.
Okay. That's your court's indulgence. All right, well, thank you for your time, sir. That's all the questions I have. Please answer any questions the defense may have.
Side of the defense.
Please report, Your Honor.
Yes.
Mr. Terry.
How you doing?
I'm good. Just briefly, you said that you went down to headquarters voluntarily,
Yes, ma'am. They called me. Yes, ma'am.
and you just said you did that because you didn't have anything to do with anything.
Yes, ma'am.
You sat down and talked to the investigators.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that they investigated you. You said that they took your DNA swab.
Yes, ma'am.
You gave it to them,
Yes, ma'am.
and they told you that they wanted to talk to you about this rideshare situation that has literally nothing to do with you.
Yes, ma'am.
It has nothing to do with Uber, right? As far as you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Begging the court's indulgence. Thank you, sir. Have nothing further.
Further questions?
No other questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You may step down. Let me call your next witness.
State calls Andrew Yee.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give in this case is the truth and whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Thank you. Please have a seat. You'll witness stand and state your full name for the record, and please spell your last name.
My name is Andrew Yee. Last name is spelled Y-I.
Mr. Yee, good afternoon. How old are you?
I just turned 40.
And where are you from?
A little bit of an Army brat, but I've been living in Columbia, South Carolina since 2000. Lived in upstate New York before that. Lived in Kansas. Lived in Germany. Was born in Colorado. So kind of all over.
Do you currently reside in Columbia, South Carolina?
Yes.
And where do you work?
The Bird Dog. I'm the general manager there.
And what is Bird Dog?
It's a restaurant bar
How long have you worked there?
since 2013.
So you were employed by Bird Dog in March of 2019?
Yes.
And around that time, do you recall anyone contacting you regarding an investigation?
Yes.
Did that investigation involve Samantha Josephson?
Yes.
And what specifically were you asked to do?
For the video and stuff of the evening and stuff.
When you say video, what do you mean by that?
Our surveillance cameras that we have outside and inside. But
And where is that camera located?
the one they were particularly interested in was the one on the, I guess if you're facing the building, it would be on the left side, facing towards, down towards Green Street.
Does that video footage show from the front door?
Yeah, it's in the top, I guess, if you're facing the building, it'd be the top left of the building, and it faces out into the parking spots and the doorway.
And did you provide a copy of that footage to officers?
Yes.
Beg the court's indulgence, Your Honor. Your Honor, I'm approaching the witness with what's been marked as State's Exhibit 3. Do you recognize what I just handed you?
Yes.
And what is that?
This is a DVD copy of the video of that evening.
And have you had a chance to review the contents of that disc?
Yes.
Are there any identifying marks on that disc?
Yes, my signature is on here.
And do the contents of the disc fairly and accurately represent the footage from Bird Dog's security camera on March 29th of 2019?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, state moves to enter what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 3 into evidence.
State's defense. It's admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All exhibits, the court requires that you provide the court copies of those exhibits. I cannot see through the back of that TV. With regard to all exhibits, counsel should provide the court copies so that I can follow the evidence.
Apologies, Your Honor. Your Honor, please.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, permission to publish to the jury?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Yee, what are we looking at here?
This is the footage from the camera on the left side of the building that overlooks the doorway and the parking spots.
And is this the camera that we're referencing here with
Yes.
regards to the security footage?
Yes.
And what is the date of that timestamp up there?
It's 3/29/2019 at 2 o'clock in the morning. Or I can't see the exact time, but 2:06 or 2:08.
March 29th of
Yeah,
2019?
March 29, 2019, yes.
Neither can I see through the solicitor.
I apologize, Your Honor. Mr. Yee, so as far as the footage goes, it goes on from here until some other time
Yeah.
that day?
Yeah, it continues, until like you can see her on her phone and stuff. But-
Your Honor, no further questions for this witness at this time.
Cross-examination.
Sir, I have no questions for this witness.
All right, thank you. You may step down. Yes. Everyone, let's stand for a moment, everyone. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm told that those are the witnesses for today. We're going to resume at 9:30 tomorrow morning. 9:30 tomorrow morning. Please remember that you're not to discuss the case with anyone or allow anyone to discuss it with you. You're to avoid contact with anyone connected with this case, and you're not to be exposed to any news, media, or any other social media information if it appears on your evening news. You're to not watch it, etc. Look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning at 9:30. Have a good evening. With regard to these exhibits that are being shown to witnesses and request for the court to make a ruling sight unseen of the exhibits, how are we going to remedy that situation? Mr. Solicitor.
For the future, Your Honor, before we show an exhibit to a witness, we will also show Your Honor, if you're just talking about the physical paper exhibits. As for video, we can do the same. We can give you a copy of the video that we just played.
Copies of every exhibit that you're going to use so that I can follow the evidence. You hand the witness a piece of paper and objection or no objection, and then I'm to rule. I don't want to stop the trial to review the document if you can just as easily provide me with the documents in advance that you intend to offer.
Yes, sir, we can do that.
That'll help us move a little smoother. Anything else before we break for the day?
No, sir.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll resume at 9:30 tomorrow morning.